if we look at the observer and we engage in practices that help shift and transform that observer, then it will naturally begin to shift how we move in the world, how we interact with others, and that engenders a different world. And so what I'd like to do is build on what Veronica presented here, looking specifically at the facets of overwhelm. So the first facet of overwhelm we can call narrative overwhelm. When our current story doesn't have enough room to hold the complexity or intensity of our experience, right? We need a story that's big enough to hold the complexities of this world. Language is generative. Words give birth to worlds. So the story that I'm living in either opens or limits what's possible. So when we say generative, that doesn't just mean it's positive, right? The language generates a world. I can generate. I just watched this movie about AI, which presented the doom. There's like the doom camp, and there's the we're going to be in a utopia camp, and it was really good at showing these different perspectives. They're different narratives that create a different world for the person that's holding it. These are two different narratives that are generating a way in which these humans that inhabit those narratives move in the world and experience reality. At the same time, the narrative that we're in, it carries a set of commitments. And to what degree is the narrative that we are in, to what degree are we committed to the story of overwhelm? Right? This will be different for each of you. But to what degree is the story that we're living in committed to overwhelm? Or a story where overwhelm is inevitable, or it's just the way modern life is. And what can happen here is we can begin to develop what are called declarations. I declare that overwhelm is inevitable and a fundamental feature of the modern world. That's a declaration, and that immediately starts to bring something into existence. Okay, so the first facet we're exploring of overwhelm is the narrative domain. Now, the next aspect here is the somatic domain. We have a nervous system that has limits. Our nervous system's job, one of its jobs, is to keep us alive, is for us to survive. And when we have a narrative that generates overwhelm, when we have an observer that perceives the world in such a way that overwhelm is the result, then one of the things that occurs is our nervous system starts to respond and produce sensations, survival responses. And so I'll show this image here. What we have here, these dotted lines, are what's called the window of presence. When we're inside the window of presence, we can experience sensations of intensity, let's call it, whether it's coming from triggered by the outside or some sort of internal experience, where it could be ecstasy, it could be a sense of something that we deem more painful. But when we're able to be with those sensations from a place of presence, we can turn towards them. Then our nervous system is in a process of regulated function. And we experience things like resiliency. We don't experience being stressed out. But what can occur is at some point, this window of presence, either the window of presence narrows or the degree of intensity is really, really loud, we might leave the window of presence. And as soon as we leave the window of presence, we're no longer able to be with our direct experience. We're like avoiding it, or we're fighting or flighting, or we're freezing or playing dead. These become survival responses that perpetuate a sense of overwhelm. Okay, so we have the narrative facet of overwhelm, and now we're looking at the somatic aspect of overwhelm. We have a story that engenders a sense of overwhelm, and then our body responds. We begin to leave the window of presence and go into survival mode. What can start to happen is we start to build a somatic patterning. When I wake up in the morning, my system goes into overwhelm because it's what I've been practicing. Our neural system is what's called plastic, which means it can grow, it can change, we can set new patterns. And whatever we practice, so if we practice being overwhelmed, it's going to create neural pathways that support overwhelm to be easier and easier to feel. Just like if you practice the guitar, at first it's a little awkward, but after a while, it becomes smoother. Well, we can do this in such a way that it feels smoother to have anxiety and overwhelm, or it can be smoother to engage from presence and resilience. So then we have this domain of moods and emotions. So our emotional literacy, when our moods and emotions are uh, engendering overwhelm in our lives, it's often because our emotional literacy is needing some attention. It's lacking in some way. And by emotional literacy, this doesn't just mean knowing about emotions. It also includes having, we could call them cultivational technologies, ways of being with emotions that allows us to be with them in a new way, with love, with presence, with curiosity, in such a way that emotions become a doorway into deeper possibilities, rather than something like, oh, I don't want to feel sad, I want to get rid of it. We have ways of turning towards that. When we don't know how to be with our emotional states, this often leads to overwhelm. Our nervous system gets freaked out. Our narratives take on the disposition of the emotions that we're experiencing, and it can throw us into a spiral. And often in this culture that we're all living in, there's often a mood of overwhelm because it's like every day, if we listen to the news, every day there's a new catastrophe, a new explosion, a new set of uncertainty factors. You know, we could say that, you know, we're in an epidemic of uncertainty. We just don't know. And so when we live in a mood of overwhelm, the prevailing gestalt, the sort of background weather pattern, uh, is one that intensifies our sense of anxiety or overwhelm or uncertainty around how to meet this moment. And finally, we have cultural relational aspects of overwhelm. We become with one another. We're not just these individuals that are walking separately through a world, we impact each other. And often, overwhelm can be a collective field phenomena, right? It's a cultural drift where we can become swept into it, right? There's a whole this activity going on, and it's easy for us to get pulled in. Our nervous systems, they co-regulate or co-dysregulate together. That means that if we're in a dynamic, like hopefully this conversation is one where we can co-regulate together. We can find a place where there's room to explore, to feel, to be curious. But just as easily, we can be in a collective where we're co-dysregulating. We're getting each other all worked up, you know, like go to Facebook. Even amongst some of the smartest people that I know on Facebook, like they're constantly like, ah, in this flurry of debate and madness. And so here we look at what is our skills in the domain of relationality. One of the things that we've been exploring, you know, for over 3 decades at Newfield is how to human better together. How do we create new ways of being together that enhances our learning, that enhances transformation, that enhances our ability to discover more and more of who we are? And this way of learning together in a new way, of being together in a new way, it helps us revise the current stories that we're in that are no longer working in a new way. Because if we've been writing a story together, we're going to continue writing this human story together. And if we can explore uh, new ways of being human together, practicing new possibilities for how we can interact and learn and explore and take on challenges, that can change everything. That can change everything.